Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So since this worked kind of pretty well last time, I'm going to use this thing again to do a little bit of screen share and talk to you about a couple of things. So first thing I want to do is just quickly give you a little bit of a shout out and kind of a recommendation to you. My original idea was to make a video talking about kind of hobby influencers and the whole thing that I don't really like about it. But at the same time, there is some function to it. But at the same time, you just have to be really aware of, who you're taking advice from and who you're trusting. But it's kind of caveat emptor for everybody, buyer beware. And that applies to everybody. That applies to everybody on the channel. Even if I say something here, I always lead with the same thing. This is my opinion, and I'm always open to have a debate and have a discussion and whatever. It's not like the final word on anything. And anybody who tries to tell you or implies that it's the final word on it or tries to make it more than this is my opinion, that's always problematic for me. And at the same time, I always have a problem when somebody doesn't really explain their rationale, or their rationale is really flimsy and kind of a high level to the point where it's like, well, I could have figured that out on my own. Not only could I have figured that out on my own, I probably could have come up with a better argument for it. And that's problematic to me, especially with a lot of folks creating channels that are kind of based on that. But somebody already kind of did a better job, or I should say a more thorough job even than kind of what I was originally considering. And they hit on almost all the points that I wanted to hit on. Maybe not all of them, but I would say I align with about 95 to 98% of what they came up with. So I want to show you here, and we're going to use a little screen share option here. So I want to share with you Sports Card Investigator channel. I only recently caught up with this channel and saw it. And then about 3 days ago, he did a video on exactly what I'm talking about. And this is the episode 6. It talks about specifically anything related to answers that you must have before trusting a sports card influencer, which is perfect and bang on. It's exactly what I kind of wanted to hit on. So, and not only that, if that doesn't check enough boxes for me, like I said, I'm aligned probably about 95 to 98% because he's really putting the onus on you to really consider why you should trust this person. And it's important to really consider that because you're taking this advice, or at least potentially acting on or having an influence on advice that's being given to you. Well, what do you know about their credentials? What do you know about what they've been in the hobby? If they showed up 5 minutes ago, would you trust somebody with any kind of piece of advice? If you were investing in a stock market or real estate, would you trust somebody? Oh yeah, I started looking at real estate like 6 months ago. It's like, is that the person that you want to be putting your faith in the sense of spending money based on some of the information you're getting? And he addresses very well a lot of kind of the general ideas that I have with that. And not only that, if that doesn't check enough boxes for me, it's a 32-minute video. It's like, oh, that's usually my wheelhouse. I feel like I've been replaced. I like my 30-minute videos that talk way too much, but I think he did a very good job in this one. So I would recommend that you check it out and at least take a look at it if you're interested in that kind of thing. I think it's important that a lot of people see, or at least understand, that with the influx of people that are giving all kinds of hobby advice, investment advice especially, we need to be a little bit more thorough and a little bit more stringent about who we're giving credence to and who we're putting our trust in. Now, with all that said, one other thing I wanted to quickly mention, so I'm going to get out of that. One other thing I want to quickly mention is that it's really important that even if you do listen to somebody who does kind of tout their credentials, but if their credentials are based on, well, I've made X amount of money in sports cards the last 6 months or the last 3 months or the last month or whatever, and I'm like, that's cool. When I watch some of these videos, because I watch them, because even if I don't agree, I still want to understand what's being said and how people are presenting these things. And I see the view counts on these things going up, and it's like, why are so many people watching this and listening to kind of what's being said here when there isn't much being said? And you've seen a lot of these videos before. One of the ones that kind of are my pet peeve a little bit right now are kind of like, oh, the top 5 insert sport hot cards right now. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, but in kind of the thing that I am going to talk about today. So since I can't talk about the criteria for sports card influencers, since somebody already did it, at the very least, I can still talk about kind of how this and also the analytics tools that I've talked about recently play into what I like to call the hobby feedback loop. So I'm going to explain that concept to you a little bit, and that's going to be my discussion for today. And as always, it's my opinion. I'm open to discussion. And if anybody has other thoughts or anything, I'd like to hear about it, and I'd be happy to engage with you and talk about that a little bit more. But one other thing I'm going to talk about is the whole idea of, oh, well, I've made money on these cards for the last little while, so you should listen to me. Well, that's great. But right now in this market, as crazy as it's been, as unstable as it's been, where things go up on a dime on almost nothing, it doesn't take a lot of genius to figure out how to make money on sports cards at the moment. That doesn't mean everybody can do it, and that doesn't mean you can't miss. But at the same time, it's not like it requires like a lot of deep analytical thinking. And I want to give you a really small sample size. And by the way, this is the smallest of small sample size. I don't want to draw any definitive conclusions on it, but I wanted to use it as an example because I'd be remiss if I just told you this and then didn't at least give you an example of something that I did to kind of as an experiment to kind of prove this point. So I'll go take you back to opening day, July 23rd, where the Yankees were playing the Nationals. In the first inning, Giancarlo Stanton homered off of Max Scherzer. Now, the thing is, I don't listen to a lot of the commentary because I think it's a lot of the play-by-play is pretty terrible. I don't really want to listen to it, but I was listening to it a little bit in the first inning, and they were talking about how Giancarlo Stanton had been leaner this year, because he was worried because he wanted to try to prevent injury, and that's all fine and dandy. That's fine. But I watched him hit a home run off Max Scherzer and absolutely crush it. And I thought to and a light bulb went off over my head, and I thought, okay, this is a short season. Almost everything that happens and is done is amplified. So this is a really quick logic that goes through my head. Like it takes just about 30 seconds, or even less. And I'm thinking, like, it wouldn't take a lot for somebody like Giancarlo Stanton's cards to immediately pick up with the minimum amount of performance. Anything would be enough, because Jordan cards went up with the documentary. So it's not like the bar is high on getting something to move. So even by the time he had finished rounding the bases, I'm already thinking to myself, and I had my laptop near me, so I grabbed it and I went on to COMC, and I said, okay, let me just look up what his rookie card is currently. And one of his rookie cards is the 2010 Topps Chrome card. And I went on to COMC and I took a look, and there were a couple available at different price points, like always. But I decided to pick up a couple. I grabbed two. One of them I paid about $6.55 for. So these are raw, ungraded copies. And then another one I paid $7.23 for. So that was on July the 23rd, the day of opening day. Now, in COMC, if you're not familiar with the platform, it's kind of then in your holdings. You don't have to sell it. You don't have to do anything. You can either eventually put it on sale and pick a price or do whatever you want to do. You can have it sit in your inventory for a while and before you do anything with it, or you can have them ship it to you so that you can have it in your possession. Like I've got about 200 cards that are sitting in COMC right now that I'm waiting on potentially shipping down the road. But right now, the turnaround time for them is so slow that to get it to Canada, I don't really want to bother with it at the moment. So it's something I'll look at down the road. So at that moment, those two Giancarlo Stanton rookie cards were sitting in my inventory, waiting for me to do something. I decided to sit on it for a day or two and just figure out what I wanted to do with it. But I had picked them up so cheap that I was happy with it. And that's kind of a investment principle that is a really easy one that doesn't require a lot of logic to figure out. But it's also one that is reasonably sound. If you buy something cheap enough, you are kind of taking a flyer, but at the same time, you don't have a lot to lose. So it's not like I was paying top dollar for these things. I was just picking them up pretty cheap. And I just said, let me sit back and see what happens. So the experiment was, let me see how long it takes before I maybe put them up on COMC myself, just to see what's going on. So what I decided to do then is I did put them on COMC. And if I look over to the side of the screen, it's just to keep an eye on something on my screen. So I did decide to put him on COMC, but I waited until I think it was the second game where he hit another home run where I think it was 483 feet, and he absolutely crushed it. I was literally watching a highlight, and then I sat there and I go, okay. So I grabbed the laptop near me. I logged on to COMC again. I grabbed one of the two cards, and I said, let me go and see what it's looking like right now. I was able to buy two of them for about $7 each, so $14 for a pair. They were already at about $20, so $18, $19, $20 on nothing, on just a couple of, not even, I think the second home run hadn't even happened and the price has already gone up, but then the second home run happened and I'm sitting there like, So what I did is I decided to go in, and you can do this on COMC. You can look at what other people are putting the price at. So I put the Giancarlo Stanton back up, and I put it there myself, and I put it for $18 just to slightly undercut the lowest price of the next highest one. Well, I did that on the 25th. I did that on the evening of the 25th, and I just want to show you a little screenshot here. So give me a second. I'm going to share this with you. So right now you're still looking at Sports Card Investigator, like I said, episode 6. If you want to check out that, he does a pretty good job breaking down kind of the things you need to worry about or think about for sports card influencers. So hopefully this comes out okay. I might have to magnify it a bit for you. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. So this is actually directly from my sales. And by the way, this is the first time I ever sold anything on COMC. So I spent all of 2 minutes figuring out how to set it up and figuring out how to put it on. And then I acquired it on the 23rd. So you can see that right here. That's the day of opening day. And then it sold on the 26th. So on the 25th in the evening, in the late hours of the evening, I put it online for $18 and it sold. It didn't even make it a day. It might have made it 12 hours because I might have even done it in the early morning hours of the 26th. By 11 a.m. on the 26th, it was sold. It was gone for a grand total profit for a credit of $17.10. Now, the reason I show this to you is not to brag about my incredible $17.10. I might be able to buy a couple of overpriced coffees with that. But the point is that how quickly the turnaround is and how quickly and overly responsive the market is to even the smallest amount of stimulus. It takes nothing. And in that kind of market, really what you're talking about, if you're holding stuff that's priced reasonably enough, you almost can't not make money. So I don't have any of the screenshots up for you right now, but one of the other ones that I had noticed and also I took advantage of was that I had around 2018, and on this channel, if you go back in the archives of the channel, around 2018, I was opening up football boxes. So that was the year of the Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, the two Joshes, Allen and Rosen, and then Saquon Barkley. So I was trying to opened up some football boxes, trying to pull some of those rookies. And I managed to pull some of them, but for the most part, nothing too crazy. And in terms of Lamar Jackson, I didn't really have that much, but although I did pull a couple. But one of the things that happened was some of the kind of lower end inserts. So I can use an example of Donruss. I opened up a couple of boxes of Donruss, and I got one of the Gridiron Kings, and I got and I opened up a box of 2018 Prism. I kind of wish I had the box. It probably is worth more than the contents of the box. But I did open a box of 2018 Prism, and one of them was like rookie introductions, Lamar Jackson. So I went and put that one up on eBay, and it sold for $20 like in a couple of minutes. And then I went on and put another couple of Lamar Jackson kind of basic inserts from things like Donruss. So we're not talking about like high-end products. We're talking about Donruss. And one of the ones that I sold, I think it was the rookies. That one I put up for a couple of dollars, let it run all the way through. I ignored a couple of offers that were kind of lowballing me, and I ended up selling that for $54. $54 for a Donruss insert, a rookie year insert. This was an ungraded card. This had been sitting in my box since 2018, and I just decided to take it out, put it up on eBay, take a picture with my cell phone, put it on, and a week later I sold it for $54. That's the market we're in. You don't really have to do anything special. So that's what I'm trying to say. Like, imagine if I had a whole stack of them. I do still have some Lamar Jackson rookies. So I'm kind of hanging on to them in case that, they do manage to play some football, although I kind of doubt it. But if they do manage to play some, it won't hurt me to have it in my possession. But that's what I'm talking about. Like, that's really small samples is what I'm talking about. But that's how little it takes. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of skill. I didn't go out of my way in 2018 going, oh, guys, I got to stack up on this Lamar Jackson. We're going to see what happens. That isn't to say I didn't stash a few aside, and I also stashed a few Baker Mayfield and some Sam Darnold and all that, and nothing may come of it. But the point is that it doesn't take a lot. So yes, I grant you that some folks have done very well trying to be a little bit more aggressive and taking some flyers on it, but a lot of things work out. Like a lot of the things have gone up in price. If you were sitting on a stack of bowl, you're going to do very well. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about kind of the investing and like a more generic, basic philosophy that at least give some underlying general principles that you can try out. I'm not going to make specific recommendations because I really don't believe in that. And I also think that it can be counterproductive rather than productive. Now, with all that said, I really want to show you this here. And I'm going to have a little fun with this one. I'm going to do the little screen share, and I'm going to go in here and I can actually do a little PowerPoint presentation for you. So hobby influencers and the feedback loop. You didn't think you were going to get a PowerPoint presentation today. By the way, it's only 3 slides, so I'm not going to torture you too hard. Okay. So this is a feedback loop. I just want to explain this to you. I want to show you a little image. So I went onto Google and pulled up an image of a basic feedback loop just so I could talk you through it really quickly. And it really comes down to this. Some kind of stimulus gets you into the loop. And then once you're in the loop, what happens is you choose an action. So something gets us in the loop, you make a decision, you choose an action. So by performing the action after that, that continues the loop. And then you're waiting for a reaction of some kind. The reaction is measured, and then we're back to choosing an action. So it's a cycle that keeps going. Now, the thing is, that can apply to a couple of different systems, a couple of different actions, a couple of different things. So this is what a feedback loop could look like. There's a lot of different examples, but this is a nice basic illustration of one. But how this falls into the hobby, I went in on the next one and I kind of filled in a little bit of the blanks. So the whole reason I started talking about the whole hobby influencer thing is because I wanted to use that with my wonderful artistic skills. I filled in this picture and filled in some of this information. Okay, so let's take the hobby influencer here. So somebody makes recommendations. You can sit there and say, oh, well, nobody's really listening to this person, or maybe a handful of people listen to them. What's the big deal? Well, that's fine, but you can take this as being a YouTube channel. You can take this as being, top 5 hottest cards, best buys under $100 or whatever, all kinds of videos that you're going to see right now in Sports Card YouTube relating to investing. If even a handful of people react to it, if that leads them into the loop and they decide based on that to do something in terms of buying the card. So first, a decision is made, and then they actually perform the action, buying the card. if even the small, relatively speaking group, so if this influencer managed to get even a relatively small group of people to do it, and by the way, I'm not going to make the distinction between someone doing this intentionally and someone doing it just accidentally in terms of, oh, I just think this is a good idea, so I'm just throwing it out there for folks. I'm not trying to make them do anything. I'm going to be nice and just say, even if it's as benign as I'm just trying to share, my enthusiasm for certain cards, fine. If the end result is that they end up buying the card, what happens then is if these sales are legitimate because this person is enthusiastic now, they were convinced by this influencer one way or another. They were influenced in order to buy it, so they buy the card. Well, that creates sales data. So this is where our analytical tools come in. So, our market movers or card ladder or whatever. If the sales are legitimate, they should end up in the analytics tool, which means now it's created something else. It's done another thing because this loop needs more stimulus in order to continue, because now somebody bought a card, but now the card has created a data point for these analytics tools. And why this is important is the next part. Well, look at this. Now other hobby channels are going to report on this because they're reporting on data. So again, I'm going to get rid of a little bit of the insidious element. I'm going to get rid of the the agendas, but let's pretend all they're doing is just reporting. I'm reporting the news. I'm not making the news. I'm reporting the news. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. So they're getting the market data from these tools, and in turn, they're saying, "Hey guys, this card is up 100% in the last 48 hours, or it's up 100% in the last week, or 150% or whatever." Well, there's two versions of that. One is they just report it straight up as it is, or another one is they say, well, that sounds like it's a great buy, it's trending upwards, whatever. So either they're trying to exert additional influence or they're simply reporting it. Well, by reporting it, they're also kind of influencing it, whether they're going out of their way to say, oh, you guys should buy the cards. It's like, no, I'm just reporting this to you. Well, if you're showing me 5 cards that are going up and I want to try to catch, something, I want to try to catch the wave and try to follow along and try to, take advantage of this to make money. Well, in that sense, you're going to influence me. Well, that is going to send you right back into the making a decision part. Maybe I buy the card, more data goes into the analytics tools. Well, now another report comes in. Oh, guys, it's up 200% now. And this cycle continues. That's the loop in the feedback loop. That's what I'm talking about. So in reality, the hobby influencer is like one step in this process, but the analytics tool creates another step in the process. But what happens here, and the reason why this is important and something that I think is worth discussing a little bit, is that so the hobby influencers started. So you can argue about whether they are being biased or not. That's a different conversation. You can believe they're 100% biased, and that's cool, and that's fine, and that's fair. But what happens is there is another audience here. So the initial audience is influenced by them, and in turn buys the card, in turn feeds these data tools. And then by the time you get here, these channels, you can say, oh, these channels are biased too. Fine. But there are going to be some people that never get to this part. But over here where the data goes into the analytics tools, maybe there's someone who doesn't pay attention to hobby influencers. Maybe there's somebody who doesn't watch those channels that give these trends. Well, guess what? At the analytics tool part of it, they could still be influenced because now they're not being influenced by a person telling them these things. They're being influenced by the data they're looking at with their own eyes. And I think it was Mark Twain who basically, nobody knows exactly who is credited with it, but the gist of it, the high level is like, there's 3 kinds of lies. There's lies, damn lies, and statistics. I remember a high school teacher that I had that talked about that, because you can use statistics to try to win an argument. And sometimes you can skew the argument with bad statistics. Well, bad statistics are those that you're just giving it to somebody without context. Well, here's the problem. It doesn't matter how good the analytical tool is. And by the way, I'm not knocking the analytical tool. I think they serve a purpose, and I think they can be helpful. But I spent the time talking about the analytical tools in the last couple of videos, just in case anybody accuses me of being hypocritical right now. I talked about them from the perspective of the actual product, the actual platform. I think they're interesting. I think they're worth watching. I want to keep my eye on it and see what they're doing, because I'm interested in that kind of stuff. But we need to be aware that there are some people who are taking these analytical tools as gospel. They're looking at it and going like, oh, so they're vetting the data, so it must be good data. Well, I'm not worried about whether the data is good or not. The problem is data without context means you're missing the point. You don't know why these sales are suddenly going up. All you're seeing is that they're going up. So if that results in you reacting to it and buying the card, so we can almost skip backwards here. Analytical tools. So instead of going all the way here, we can go backwards. So you decide to act based on the sales data. You buy the card. More data goes in the analytical tool. More people are driven to buy the card. More data goes in the analytical tool. And eventually you end up over here, because this is going to get reported anyway. These channels are going to do this. And then that'll influence somebody else to consider it, buy the card, and the cycle just continues. This circle continues, this loop over and over and over again. It's just something to consider, because I think it's a reality, and I think this is happening on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be a big dramatic thing. It doesn't have to be for big high dollar cards and all that, but you have to concede that there is a loop, a cycle, because the more people talk about certain cards, the more attention they get. Well, in turn, that's going to promote some people to buy it. And the more data that comes up there, some people are only following the data and they're going to react only to the data. Well, those people are going to end up buying too. And if they end up buying too, that only feeds the data, which leads to more people buying, which feeds the data, which leads to more people buying. And the cycle continues over and over and over again. And even if the hobby influencer never comes back, they already did their job. They did what they needed to do. Whether you believe they're doing it for their own benefit or whether you believe they're genuinely giving enthusiasm about a card, it doesn't matter. Once the cycle starts and once this loop gets going, it's self-perpetuating. It can keep itself going the way that I just described to you. So I just wanted to introduce to you the little concept of the feedback loop in the hobby as I see it. This is just something I'm observing and something I'm thinking about. It's a theory I have, and it's something that I think is worth kind of thinking about and considering a little bit more. So from that perspective, maybe you agree with me, maybe you disagree with me, but either way, I welcome the discussion. What do you think about this? Does it make any sense to you? Am I out to lunch? Am I just making stuff up? Did I just use an excuse to play around with my iPad and drop a little document, a little picture? It could be. Maybe it is. Maybe it can be both. But anyway, I just thought I would throw that out to you. And we'll keep this one under 30 minutes. So there you go. If you like the video, hit the like button. If you kind of are interested in this kind of a deep dive into some of these ridiculous things that I like to come up with from time to time, subscribe to the channel. And we'll be back with more regular kind of hobby content and a couple of things that I'm planning and working on, hopefully, in the next little while. Some fun things are coming down the pipeline because I think I'm definitely going to have something to say about the first virtual con from Sports Card Investor, because that's going to be an interesting thing to look at. One way or the other, I want to check it out and see kind of what they're doing, at least in contrast to what I saw in the virtual expo earlier this year. So it'll be interesting to see how they took their approach in terms of doing that on their side of it. So with that, I'll leave you. Thanks very much, as always, for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.